Gu Shijiu quickly lifted her head and looked at Mr. Fui. Nian, Nianma? Mr. Fui shifted his gaze to her. Yes. Gu Shijiu continued. How can you be so tall when you're just 6 years old? Did you take any medicine to do so? Certainly. That was Shen Nianma. He looked at Gu Shijiu with a sparkling eye. Did you know me before this? Why not? I even gave you a birthday present on your first birthday. You were just as tall as a bean sprout at that time. I cannot believe that you've grown up so much in such a short time. You even know how to flirt now. Anyway, all of his junior apprentices were older than him. Why would they willingly address him as eldest senior? That was the reason she did not think that he was Shen Nianma. Gu Shijiu could not stop cursing silently. It was indeed beyond her expectation. Was it a norm for a child to turn into an adult in just 6 years? Was his gene mutated? Gu Shijiu was once warned to distance herself from the people in that world. Hence, she did not want to disclose her true identity now. Therefore, she did not say much but smiled. Your Highness is generally famous in our world. Thus, it was common for her to know that he was only 6 years old. In other words, she had indirectly answered his question. Shen Nianma slightly twitched his lips. He had very famous parents, but he did not wish to live under their glory. Thus, he always used his nickname when he was away from home. In that era, people had a first name and also the middle name. The middle name was usually given before adulthood. Shen Nianma turned into an adult when he was 3 years old, and he only found that his parents had left a letter to him when he returned to the Fantian Palace. His unreliable parents had left for a business trip at some other continent again. They wanted him to take good care of himself since they were going for at least a decade. Therefore, his father named him Fui as his middle name. His father was a very open-minded person, as he claimed that he did not really care about the family name because he used to pick his own family name as well. Therefore, Shen Nianma did not necessarily have to take his father's family name. In fact, he could pick Di, Emperor, Huang, King, or any other name as his family name. He even said Shun, deity, Fui was not a good combination. Shen Nianma felt that his father did not want him to leverage on the popularity of his family name, which was exclusively given to him. As a result, Shen Nianma truly thought that Di Fui sounded more dominant and elegant than Huang Fui after a short ponder. Therefore, he always used Di Fui as his name when he was out and often got people to address him as Mr. Fui. He has been behaving like an adult in the recent 3 years. Hence, nobody treated him like a child as well. Even though he was the youngest in the clan, the way he dealt with everything was even better than the adults. That was the reason all his juniors who were older than him recognized him as their senior. Only his master still called him as Nianma. The rest of his juniors addressed him as eldest senior. At that moment, Gu Shijiu had turned into a young girl who looked about 13 to 14 years old, which was almost the same age as Qing Luo. Hence, she was just a little girl in Shen Nianma's eyes. However, he felt the way the little girl looked at him was like an aunt looking at a kid. On the other hand, Si Qing and Heng Qing have seen Gu Zijia's appearance before. Hence, they were not shocked at all. Their juniors were still in denial. Even spiritual master Yu Hang was stunned, as he did not expect her to be that young. You are. He then looked at those half-orcs that had been killed. He really could not believe that such a young girl could kill all those half-orcs, especially because they all possessed quite powerful spiritual power. Even he might not be able to do that alone. Where did this little girl come from? How could she have such good kung fu? He had checked the wounds of the half-orcs and confirmed that Gu Shijiu did not use any forbidden spells, which means the little girl indeed possessed a very powerful and dangerous kung fu. However, he could not think of whose disciple she could be. Suddenly, he took a step forward and launched a fierce attack directly to Gu Zijia's face. Everyone was shocked. Si Qing and Heng Qing were shocked and shouted, "Master! She saved us! Please, spare her life." Qing Luo snorted. Just because she saved your life, it does not mean she has a good intention. Shen Nianma did not respond but stood aside to observe. Certainly, Gu Shijiu would not just wait for the attacks. Swiftly, she began to fight with Spiritual Master Yu Hang. Initially, Spiritual Master Yu Hang did not give all in as he was afraid to hurt Gushijio. But after a while, he began to use 90% of his power and eventually tried his best to fight. In a brief moment, spiritual master Yuhang suddenly retreated and looked at Gushijio in awe. "May I know who is your master?" He proudly claimed that he knew all the kung fu in the world, but he had not seen any of the strategies used by Gushijio. This question was difficult for Gushijio to answer since she was trying to keep a low profile. However, the strange voice in her head suddenly assigned a new mission to her. Try to find a way to stay beside Shin Yinma and help him get his kung fu restored as soon as possible. Gushijio was stunned. Restore? His kung fu is already powerful. Look, he has already achieved the power of a golden immortal at the age of 6. Other kids are still wearing their diaper at this age. He is the master of the heavenly law. So you want me to stay by his side until he's got his kung fu fully restored at the level of the master of the heavenly law. Which means there was no fixed duration for her. Not fully restored. Only until he achieves the level of a mighty immortal. Gushijio remained silent and continued. What if I reject the mission? Then Huang Tu will never resurrect. Gushijio was surprised. Do you mean it is still possible for Huang Tu to resurrect? You can say so. Fine, I accept this mission. Gushijio finally agreed. While she was still thinking about what identity she should use to stay around Shin Yinma, she blurted out, I have no master. Spiritual master Yuhang's eyes were sparkling. He could not believe that this child learned all the kung fu by herself. She was a genius. She was probably as good as Shin Yinma. If he could recruit such a genius in his clan, he would even smile in his sleep, as it would definitely make everyone jealous. Spiritual Master Yuhang was eager to recruit this outstanding disciple. Hence, he looked calmly at Gushijio, but tried to point out her flaws. Little girl, you are indeed a genius, but some of your strategies are not perfect, especially your spells. I think it is because you have no teacher to guide you. I am sure you will excel in this world if you can find a good teacher as your guide. Spiritual Master Yuhang tried his best to indirectly convince her. However, he probably sounded too indirect. Hence, Gushijio did not quite understand his message, as she was not focused on the conversation either. In fact, Spiritual Master Yuhang's advice reminded her that she could recruit Shin Yinma as her disciple. If he became her disciple, then she could stay by his side and force him to practice. Gushijio immediately felt refreshed and looked at Shin Yinma. She looked even more genuine than Spiritual Master Yuhang. Yinma, do you want another teacher? Shin Yinma frowned. Gushijio immediately used the advice given by Spiritual Master Yuhang. You're quite powerful, but your moves were not perfect. I think it is because you do not have enough teachers. Are you keen to be my disciple? I have studied this area for quite some time. Gushijio recalled that Shun Juli helped his son to find more than 10 teachers. Hence, Shin Yinma was not restricted to only have one teacher. She truly thought it was not a big deal to have her as his extra teacher. Shin Yinma was still silent. He was shocked as he looked at this little girl, who was just as tall as his chest but still pretends to be an adult. Wants to be her teacher. He confidently rejected her. No. Gushijio frowned and decided to try harder. Why not? You have seen my kung fu and my spiritual power, right? Shin Yinma interrupted her right away. Having spiritual power that is as good as a mighty immortal is not enough. I will not even be your disciple, even if you are as good as the great deity. It must be a joke. How could he get a little girl to be his teacher? Moreover, he had a special feeling for her. Although he had yet to find out what exactly the feeling was, he knew that he did not want to be her disciple. What a little asteriskla. He was already rebellious at the age of 6. Gushijio took a deep breath and was about to continue saying something. However, Spiritual Master Yuhang finally regained his consciousness and interrupted. The little girl tried to take his disciple away. Spiritual Master Yuhang rubbed his forehead and said, Little girl, Nianmo's teachers are appointed by the Divine Lord. Hence, he can only recognize the 10 of us as his teachers. No one else can have this title. Was it true? If so, Gushijio had lost the opportunity to recruit a disciple. which means she could not complete the mission as well. If she could not be his teacher, what other excuses could she use to stay by his side? Suddenly, an idea came up after she looked at Spiritual Master Yuhang. Spiritual Master Yuhang, what did you say earlier? Spiritual Master Yuhang was stunned by her question. He repeated, I said Nianmo's teachers were all appointed by the Divine Lord. Not this, the last phrase. Spiritual Master Yuhang was stunned. The last phrase? What was it? Spiritual Master Yuhang had a good memory, so he finally recalled after a quick ponder. I said your kung fu is quite good, but it is not perfect, especially the spells. I think it is because you have no teacher to guide you. I'm sure you will excel if you have a good teacher. Do you mean you want to recruit me as your disciple? Gu Shijiu asked. Spiritual Master Yuhang was confused. Huh? Oh yeah. He was taken aback, as it initially seemed that Gu Shijiu was trying to steal his disciple. Sure. Gu Shijiu agreed. Huh? Spiritual Master Yuhang was confused. You. Gu Shijiu happily smiled and continued. I can be your disciple, but I have 3 conditions. Chongsheng can consider being your disciple if you can promise me the 3 conditions. It was usually the case that a student would be desperate to find a teacher who would take them under their wing, but that was the first time someone looked for a teacher with terms and conditions. Qing Luo was distraught. She felt it was very unfair. She remembered that she had put in a lot of effort and gone through many examinations when she tried to enter the clan. Hence, she began to blast Gu Shijiu verbally. Ren Chongsheng, who do you think you are? How can you talk to my master this way? Do you know how many people wish to be his disciple? How dare you propose terms and conditions for being my master's disciple? Master, this girl is too arrogant. Don't take her. Qing Luo, keep silent. Spiritual Master Yuhang interrupted Qing Luo. He turned to Gu Shijiu and asked, what conditions do you have? Firstly, I can be your disciple, but I want the greeting ritual to be waived. Secondly, I want my freedom so that I can come and leave whenever I want. You should not interfere with this. Lastly, I want to be your most senior disciple so that I can help you to guide your juniors. Gu Zijia's conditions were considered harsh. Even before Spiritual Master Yuhang could say anything, Qing Luo already yelled at Gu Shijiu. Who do you think you are? We will only recognize our eldest brother as our senior. No one else can replace him. Gu Shijiu did not bother with her, as she was a mighty immortal who was more than 200 years old. She would not take the words of a young girl too personally. She only looked at Spiritual Master Yuhang and asked, Deal? Spiritual Master Yuhang paused and said frankly, I can promise you the first 2 conditions. However, the strongest is always the leader. You can be their leader and guide them on behalf of me without hurting them if you manage to defeat Nianmo. It was entirely out of Qing Luo's expectation that her master agreed on such harsh terms. She even suspected that her master's brain had gone haywire. She shouted, I'll never obey you. Gu Shijiu was finally willing to look at her. Don't worry, I'm not interested in guiding you. She was not a saint and not interested in teaching a stubborn person. In fact, she only wanted to be Shun Nianmo's guide, and the rest would just be favors. Qing Luo was speechless. However, she was not stupid. Ren Chongsheng, you just want to control my eldest brother, don't you? You are smart this time. Gu Shijiu complimented her and looked at Spiritual Master Yuhang. So I assume you agree with all the terms? Spiritual Master Yuhang looked at Shun Nianmo. He calmly said, she could be the boss if she can defeat me 1 year later. Meanwhile, she does not need to address me as eldest senior, and I will not address her as my senior either. We will call each other by name. Spiritual Master Yuhang immediately looked at Gu Shijiu. Sounds fair, what do you think? In fact, Gu Shijiu did not have a strong interest in the hierarchy. She was just trying to find an excuse to teach Shun Nianmo. She was certain that Shun Nianmo would try his best to practice because of this incident. That was her main objective. Therefore, she happily agreed. Sure, they'll call him Nianmo from now onward. Fui, Shun Nianmo corrected her. You must call me Fui. Otherwise, he felt that she was calling a little boy. Fine, Fui. Gu Shijiu felt the name was lovely, but it also made her feel a little depressed. Nianma, who is the person behind the plot? Spiritual Master Yu Hangzhenren did not see the young palace master, so he was curious. It is a woman who prefers to dress like a man. Her cultivation level should be at 1,000 years and above, comparable to the standard of a golden immortal. One of her strengths is alchemy. The half-orc men under her command are not real beasts. They have swallowed a kind of special pill and have unfortunately turned into their beastly appearance. She took the children away to create a kind of pill that can increase one's power instantly by great folds. Shen Yinma shared his information. Yu Hangzhenren was puzzled. Where is the woman now? She has escaped through a secret tunnel. Qing Luo stamped her feet eagerly and said, "We cannot let this vicious woman run away. Why aren't we going after her? Let's go. Let's go." She took a leap and entered the secret tunnel. Gu Shijio was speechless. Shiniamo's expression changed abruptly. Nonsense. Swift as lightning, he entered the tunnel. Ah! A loud scream could be heard coming from Qing Luo in the tunnel. Covered entirely in a vivid flash of purple ray, she could be seen being taken out of the tunnel. The impact was so strong that she almost bumped into Si Qing. Si Qing gave her a hand to help her stand properly. Qing Luo was still in a state of shock. She looked at Shun Yinma uneasily and said, "My eldest senior, you." She saw clearly. It was Shun Nianmo's sleeves that took her out of the tunnel. Fool! Shen Yinma did not hold back his sarcasm. What makes you think that you can enter this or a place easily? When will you learn to be smarter? Qing Luo was a little intimidated under his stern manner, but she remained unconvinced. The woman has escaped from here, so we should go after her. Moreover, I do not see anything strange about the tunnel. Speaking of which, her tongue was suddenly a little numb. She could not help but try licking her lips. Oddly enough, her lips began to taste as sweet as honey, so she continued to lick more and more. She could not help it. It was like an addiction. Suddenly, she was driven by a strong desire to chew and swallow her lips. It was a strange desire, strong enough to disregard the consequences. She had lost all sense of thought. Immediately, she started biting her lips. "Stop biting." Gu Shijio, who had been standing aside, suddenly emerged. An intermittent seven-colored ray flashed by, and Qing Luo was then frozen. The crowd was shocked. They glanced to the direction where Gu Shijio was coming from. Instead of looking back, Gu Shijio only fixed her eyes on Qing Luo. "She is poisoned," she said coldly but firmly. Everyone then turned their eyes and focused on Qing Luo. Qing Luo stood frozen like a piece of wood that was unable to move. Only her eyes blinked in despair. Her complexion, however, was very attractive at the moment. Her cheeks flushed crimson, as pink as the cherry blossoms. Her lips were brightly colored, as charming as the blossoming peach trees in the rainy season of March. Qing Luo was a good-looking lady with silky smooth skin. The place was dim, so they did not realize her sudden change of complexion, not until Gu Shijio pointed it out. What kind of poison had she got? Yu Hangzhenren's power was exceptionally good, but he knew nothing about poisons at all. Hence, his disciples were no different. Shen Yinma knew very little about it, too. He could cure normal poisons, but not the one that Qing Luo had. All of them looked at each other in dismay, then to Gu Shijio. Yu Hangzhenren gazed at Gu Shijio with eyes full of hope and said, "Chongsheng, do you know about this type of poison? How should we cure it?" Gu Shijio remained silent. Instead, she circled Qing Luo to observe her. Then, she took out a light blue needle. As seen from her eyes, panic started to fall upon Qing Luo. Swiftly, Gu Shijio placed several needles on her neck, her hands, and her back. Qing Luo was suffering from a severe itching all over her body. She wanted to bite on anything just to feel better. Gu Zijia's acupuncture treatment gave her an immediate sense of relief, at least for now. She gasped for air, hoping that Gu Shijio would place a few more needles to save her from the misery. The blue needles had visibly turned pink. Only the very end of the needle, the part where Gu Shijio was holding, was still in its original color. She flicked the needle away, and it disappeared instantly when it hit the wall. The poison that she has got is the cherry blossom snake poison. The poison is contagious. It is best if you stay away from her to avoid any skin contact, Gu Shijio answered with great composure. All were panicked. Yu Hangzhenren was astonished as well. Is there any cure? There is. Please wait for a moment. Gu Shijio teleported to the side of Si Qing and demanded, Give me your hand. Ah! Si Qing was obviously bewildered. You are poisoned as well. If you want to live, give me your hand now. Then, Gu Shijio took out another blue needle. Si Qing trusted her, so he gave her both hands and looked at her fixedly, overwhelmed with a strong sense of admiration. His female idol was about to cure the poison for him. He was grateful for the poison all of a sudden. Otherwise, she would not approach him as closely as she was now. Nonetheless, he was still a little nervous for what Gu Shijio was about to do. Shin Yimma suddenly offered, Let me do it. He then took the needle away from Gu Shijio. No way. You cannot possibly do it. I can, Shin Yimma interrupted. Confidently, he knew the steps. He saw how Gu Shijio did it a few moments ago. There should be no difference regardless of who performed it. It could be him or Gu Shijio, as long as the result was the same. Gu Shijio tried to understand his purpose. He is infected through transmission, so the treatment will be different from the previous one. There is no way you can do it, even though you have memorized the steps. Let me. I will do as you say. Shin Yimma did not keep himself back. Gu Shijio was at a loss for words. Gu Shijio could not quite understand his mood swings. However, it was not the proper time to argue. She told him immediately about the steps and observed carefully as he performed them. Shin Yimma was arguably one of the greatest talents that she had seen. He pointed the needles at the acupuncture points swiftly according to Gu Zhijia's instructions, no matter how complicated the steps were. He handled the treatment with great dexterity. A few moments later, Si Qing's poison was contained. Yu Hangzhenren took a look at both of his beloved disciples and wondered, Has the poison been cured already? Gu Shijio shook her head to dismiss his hope. I have not got rid of the poison entirely. I can only contain it. If we fail to find the cure within a day, they will both die when the poison takes effect. What is the cure? How can we find it? Gu Shijio did not answer his questions. Instead, she took out 2 bags and placed Si Qing and Qing Luo in the bags respectively. She then responded to Yu Hangzhenren, who was seemingly confused. Please take both of them back and find the closest tavern. Place them in 2 different ice baths. I will meet you later when I find a cure. Before he answered, she took a swift leap and disappeared into the pitch-black tunnel. Aside from the cure, the poison itself was a very rare treasure, especially the snake. The crowd was shocked by Gu Zhijia's sudden disappearance into the tunnel. Now that Gu Shijio had entered the tunnel as well, would anything happen to her? Yu Hangzhenren gazed at the tunnel with a rather complicated look in his eyes. He was actually amazed by the lattice's extraordinary ability, though unsure of her origin. He was not worried that anything would go wrong. Gu Shijio was very careful in her every move, unlike Qing Luo, who was completely reckless. She must have entered the tunnel to look for the cure. Yu Hangzhenren had many men with him. Almost all of the elites were present. Also, he had contacted many of his friends for their help. While he was there having a conversation with Gu Shijio, the rest of the people were thoroughly inspecting the tree palace. The most powerful half-orc men were all summoned by the young palace master to guard the place. All of them were, unfortunately, killed by Gu Shijio and Shin Yimma. There were many half-orc men in the tree palace, but most of them escaped when they realized their lives might be at risk. Those that were left behind were stranded in the palace. In the end, all of them were captured alive by the disciples of the different clans. There were many routes in the tree palace, like a massive labyrinth of intricate windings. It would take a long time to explore the place fully. Seeing both of his disciples being poisoned, Yu Hangzhenren was desperate to protect them, for fear that anything bad might happen to them. Nianma, take them and leave this place. Do according to what Chongshang has said and place them in ice baths. I will stay and wait for her here. Yu Hangzhenren instructed Shen Yinma. Shin Yinma disagreed to his proposition. You should guide them and leave this place. I will check the tunnel with her. With a swift leap, he dived into the tunnel. Yu Hangjinren was taken by utter surprise. He rushed forward in despair. Nianma. He called out his name desperately. The child must not be harmed at all. Otherwise, he would have to bear all the consequences. Master, I am fine. You can now leave with them. A directed audio came from the tunnel. Yu Hangjinren was still very concerned. Chongsheng, are you all right? I am fine. We are now looking for the cure. Yu Hangjinren was finally relieved. Without further ado, he guided his disciples and left the place together. Within the aisles of the tunnel, Gu Shijio floated in an ethereal lightness. She stayed focused on every little detail. The tunnel felt as though it was endless and completely dark. Without her immense level of cultivation, she would not be able to see anything. Qing Luo got the poison from a snake, so only the gallbladder of that particular snake could cure the poison completely. Qing Luo was bitten within seconds in the tunnel, meaning that the snake must be hiding somewhere close to the entrance. The secret tunnel was the only way of escape for the young palace master, so there must be many traps to ensure that no one in pursuit was able to reach her. The traps were her guarantees of a successful escape, which explained why Shin Yinma was so eager in taking Qing Luo out of the tunnel to make sure she was unharmed. He was quick, but not quick enough. Qing Luo was already bitten. The snake was very hard to come by. Gu Shijio had never seen it before, too. However, she had studied the book of poisons that Di Fui left behind, so she was aware of the symptoms and the cure. The young palace master must have been keeping the snake in one of the corners and only released it when she was escaping. Being in such a dark tunnel, Gu Shijio dared not act impetuously and had to be very careful. Right after she came in, she could feel some movements around her. Intuitively, she moved back a little in retreat and was surprised to see Shen Yinma landing next to her. Gu Shijio was concerned. This spot is dangerous. Let's get to a higher place. Shin Yinma threw her a quick look at Gu Shijio and asked, What does the snake look like? The snake moves very fast, as swift as lightning. It is not safe for you to be here, Nianma. You should leave. Gu Shijio talked very fast, as she was desperate to send Shin Yinma out of the tunnel. Her spiritual level was the standard of a mighty immortal. Also, she often encountered many different kinds of poison all year round, so the poisons could hardly harm her anymore. She was not afraid of the snake. If bitten, she could always take pills to suppress the poison. However, it was not the same for Shen Yinma. He was merely a golden immortal. Once bitten, he would still be poisoned. Shin Yinma glanced at her coldly and demanded, Call me Fui. Gu Shijio was speechless. All right then. Fui, you should leave. Your little body will not be able to handle the bite. Gu Shijio persuaded him further. Little body? Frustrated, Shen Yinma could not help but grind his teeth. She would see him as a child, now that she knew about his identity. He refused to interact any further with her and took out a pale white pearl. He flicked the pearl to activate its luminance. Soon, the entire tunnel lit up. Gu Shijio was surprised to see the brightness, so she quickly took the bead in her hand. The brightness will scare the snakes away. Don't you want to save your fellow junior apprentices anymore? Shin Yinma whizzed the pearl out in the air before she managed to catch it. Hence, Gu Shijio failed to catch the bead. Instead, her hand fell right into his palm. He took her hand firmly and reassured, Quiet, don't move. His hand was supple and warm. Her heart started to throb a little when he grabbed her hand. The palpitation only lasted for a moment. However, when she remembered that he was only a 6-year-old child, the admiration was immediately replaced with a sense of maternal instinct. She took her hand back. Worried that it might hurt his feelings, she had to comfort him by patting gently on the back of his hand while she said, Don't be silly. The snakes are afraid of the light. Please take the pearl back. While she was talking, she also started waving her sleeves in pursuit of the pearl. Shin Yinma took her sleeves back and reassured her again. Don't worry. That is a snake pearl that can draw the attention of any snakes. Snake pearl? Did such a treasure really exist? Gu Shijio had only heard about it. Today, She could finally see it with her own eyes. She could not help but stare at it. The pearl did not glow with intense brightness. Instead, the luminance that it gave off was rather cold and soft. Under its radiance, every inch about the place could be clearly observed to the minutest detail. Gu Shijio held her breath when she heard something moving. It was the sound of an animal crawling. The poisonous creatures that lingered around in the darkest place must not be taken lightly. Gu Shijio was worried that Shun Nianma might be bitten by one of the snakes, so she quickly pulled it behind her. Don't go anywhere. Take notice of what's on your feet. Shun Nianma looked at her attentively. She was a petite girl of only about 1.6 meters in height. He lowered his head and was immediately overwhelmed by her refreshing scent. He let out a chuckle. Then, with one hand on her shoulder, he agreed delightfully. You have to take care of me. Gu Shijio could sense his warm breaths from behind. Overwhelmed by his scent, her heart started to throb a little. She could tell that Shin Nianmo's attitude toward her was a bit odd, but she dismissed the thought immediately due to the urgency of the situation. In fact, whenever she was reminded that he was only a little child, she would stop overthinking the matter. She could feel that his palm was getting a little too warm. Gu Shijio was alert of the possible threats, like the instincts of a woman intimidated by a powerful man. She was about to take a step forward to get away from his grasp, but that was when he pulled her close by the waist. Quiet. The snakes are here. Gu Shijio was surprised. It was true that the snakes were here, but why must he pull her close at the waist? Why did the child have to be so touchy? Gu Shijio wanted to hit his arm to let her go, but before she could even touch him, he suddenly pulled his arm back. She almost hit herself at the stomach. Shin Nianma did not only let her go, but he also took a few steps backward and hid himself behind her protective figure, like a child seeking for protection. Chongsheng, you have to look after me. I am afraid of snakes. Gu Shijio did not feel quite right. The child sounded like he was trying to flirt. If you are afraid of snakes, you should get up there and wait patiently. Gu Shijio responded scornfully while eyeing the pearl. No, Chongsheng, we shall do this together. You are considered as my junior apprentice, so I cannot possibly leave you behind. Shin Nianma answered with a firm determination, as if fearless in the face of death. If things go right, I can be your senior apprentice. Never mind, we should talk about this a year from now. It is not the time to talk about these insignificant things. I see that many snakes have approached. Which of them is the desired one? Gu Shijio was speechless. The child was indeed good at playing tricks. He was the one who had brought up the topic of senior and junior apprentices. Now he acted as though Gu Shijio was pressuring him merely on the insignificant titles. Determined, she decided not to lower herself to the same level as the child. She turned and fixed her eyes on the pearl instead. A terrifying scene unfolded before her eyes. There was indeed an abundance of snakes. There were snakes of different sizes and colors. Some were red, black, and even purple. The snakes rustled tirelessly on the ground, emerging from many hidden corners of the tunnel. Like flying moths darting into the fire, they slowly moved towards the pearl. In a swarm, the colorful snakes moved in a compact mass. Under the radiance of the pearl, their eyes started to reflect in pale green. Gu Shijio could see many small, green eyes shimmering. She was irritated by the repetitive patterns of the snake. The sight of the countless snakes immediately sent a shiver down her spine. These rarely seen snakes were extremely poisonous. The very poison that was spurted from the snake was enough to kill a celestial being. The air was now also filled with the fishy smell of the snakes. Gu Shijio tried to suppress the irritation and focused on the snakes to differentiate them. Which one? Shin Nianma lowered his head and whispered into her ear. Gu Shijio was mildly agitated by his warm breath, so she shifted her head a little. I have not found it. Why do I get a feeling that you are interested in all these snakes? Gu Shijio did not answer. Truth be told, she was indeed interested in all of them. She was an expert in the use of poisons. Her habit was to study all kinds of poison, so she would definitely be interested in the poisonous snakes. These snakes were the treasured rarities that she would love to collect. However, the snakes were too venomous. She dared not rush into the circle of snakes foolishly and catch them all at once. Perhaps she should start with the ones at the back. If you call me as your senior apprentice, I will catch these snakes for you. Shun Yinma offered his help. He was standing very close to her. Gu Shijio answered scornfully, I thought you were afraid of snakes. If you can call me as your senior apprentice, I can forget about my fear for a second. The child had a smooth tongue. Gu Shijio did not take him seriously. She continued to eye on the snakes while thinking of a way to catch them. Shun Yinma suddenly lunged forward and moved very quickly towards the snakes. Gu Shijio was shocked by his sudden move. Quickly, she pulled his clothes and dragged him back forcefully. Are you looking for death? All these snakes are extremely venomous. Once bitten by any of them, you will die almost instantly. It was a child's behavior to act impulsively. The young were usually fearless. Shun Yinma looked at her fixedly. Are you worried that I might die? Gu Shijio thought that the question was rather odd. She was certainly worried. If he died, her mission would be considered as a failure. Apart from the mission, she really liked the child, so she would not have the heart to watch him die in vain. She could not tell him the truth, so she sighed in a helpless tone. You are the only precious child to your parents. If anything happens to you, your parents will hunt me down. Shun Yinma was disappointed. He had not expected that her kind gestures were all for the sake of his parents. Therefore, he hugged his arms and stood his ground. All right, you should do it yourself. Gu Shijio had always wanted to catch the snakes herself, but at the same time, she could not leave Shun Yinma alone in the dark. She was worried that he might be bitten by one of the snakes that escaped her eyes. She thought about it for a moment. Then, she took out a bottle and circled him with the medicine. Stay within the circle. Don't get out of here. Did she think that he was a well-known Tang priest who needed protection at all times? Why would she circle him in a protective ring? Also, the circle was imperfect. Gu Shijio took a leap and landed at the circle of snakes. The first snake that she was about to catch was the most colorful one. The snake was the rarest and the most venomous kind out of all. If she was not mistaken, it was the king of snakes. Like lightning, Gu Shijio sped. She tried to catch it from the air by clinging onto its vital point. To her surprise, the snake reacted very quickly. Within a split second, the snake retreated and hid amongst the other snakes. The snake pearls started to fall, and all the other snakes were alarmed. Defensively, many of them turned to look at Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio failed to catch the snake, but she needed to step onto a surface in order for her to bounce back to her original position. Unfortunately, there were countless of snakes under her. No matter where she chose to land, she would definitely be bitten. Desperately, she was determined to step onto the snakes. However, all of a sudden, she could feel a force at her waist. Soon, her entire body was being lifted. Safely, she landed safely in the hands of a man. Shun Yinma whispered, For the sake of your life, I would like to hear you call me as your senior apprentice. In your dreams, Gu Shijio stomped on his foot. He finally let go of her waist and placed her securely on the ground. She turned and looked at Shun Yinma. There he stood, well-behaved and unmoving in the circle. He did not even move a bit. Although the child was fond of taking advantage of her, she could not help but agree that his help came when she needed it the most. You have indeed saved me, but I'm not afraid of the bites, so it doesn't count as saving my life. Therefore, little child, it does not count as a life-saving gesture. It is not easy to make me address you as my senior apprentice. Little child, Shun Yinma had been saying the term repeatedly. Then, he continued half-jokingly, You sound like you have aged a lot. How old are you exactly? Gu Shijio hesitated. She knew that he would not listen to her if she continued to show him her teenage side. She did not look superior enough. Moreover, her current appearance had greatly restricted her power, so she seriously considered returning to her old self. If Gu Shijio chose to return to her original size now, her dress would be shattered. It would not be so decent to be completely nude in front of a child. Hence, Gu Shijio did not answer. Quietly, Shun Yinma studied her expression and questioned, Are you the maiden of heavenly mountains from the celestial devil continent? The Maiden of Heavenly Mountains was a character of the novel The Demigods and Semi-Devils. She aged more than 100 years, but maintained the appearance of a child. She would never grow or age another day. The child knew many things. He was indeed a rare talent. After all, he was the son of a man who came from the future. She gave him a tight smile, but did not deny his suspicion. I have seen you without your pants. Shen Yinma was utterly surprised. She managed to trigger him. If the same thing came from somebody else, Shen Yinma would only reply with a snide comment. This time, however, he chose to react differently to the remark that came from the little girl. When I was without my pants. What did you see? The child was perverted. A child of 6 years old should not have such thick skin to question something so perverted. He should be more naive and adorable. What else could she see when he was without his pants? She must have seen his private part. She did not mean to make the topic sound so perverted. She only wanted to show him how old she actually was. He gave her a fixed glare while waiting for her answer. Gu Shijio refused to continue to the topic any further. She did not want him to make it sound even worse than it already was. She threw him a glance and answered briefly. A child should not be so perverted. Then, she took a leap and was ready to rush into the snakes again. However, Shen Yinma immediately halted her attempt when he grabbed her wrist. Wait! His quick reflex surprised Gu Shijio. What are we waiting for? Shen Yinma put a finger on his lips and demanded. The method you are using to catch these snakes is too reckless. I will show you. Suddenly, he took out a lute and started playing melodiously. The tune was rather odd. Although the piece of music was not entirely well tuned, it was at least pleasant. Initially, the snakes were circling the snake pearl in a mass, but when the music started playing, these snakes suddenly picked up their bodies and swayed along with the melody as if they were dancing. Was it a melody that could control the snakes? Gu Shijio looked at Shen Yinma with disbelief. She had never expected him to know about the trick. However, if he was going to use the lute to manipulate the snakes, why did he even bother to unleash the snake pearl at the very beginning? It was an unnecessary move. She fixed her eyes on Shen Yinma. He took a few seemingly random modes of movement as if he was setting up a spell. The tunnel was sealed without any ventilation, but at this very moment, his robes were swaying in gusts of strong wind. However, he stood firmly and played his lute freely. She felt that he looked somewhat familiar. Tears started to roll in her eyes like his presence had just reminded her of something that she had been painstakingly looking for, but failed to find. Fui! She could not help but whisper his name in her breath. They were standing close to each other, so he could definitely hear her. He did not stop playing the lute, but his eyes were on her attentively as he whispered, Recovering from her preoccupation of thoughts, Gu Shijio was shocked even by her own behavior. To her dismay, she had definitely gone too far. He was only a child. Gu Shijio shook her head in disapproval. It was probably the premenstrual syndrome that had caused her confusion, which explained why she was emotionally affected when the child flirted with her. Shen Yinma was obviously treating her as someone who was of the same age as him, which was why he would not stop flirting. The absurdity could not go on anymore. The snakes danced violently to the sound of the lute. A few moments later, some of the snakes lay quietly on the ground, exhausted from the dance. Others were alarmed. They knew they should not follow the dance any longer, but they could not control their movement at all. About 15 minutes later, all the remaining snakes lay helplessly on the ground. Shen Yinma finally let the lute down. You can begin your hunt now. Pick whichever that you want, he uttered. While he was talking, he also turned around to check the surroundings for Gu Shijio. However, what he saw shocked him to the core. He was frozen momentarily, then took a step back in retreat. The beautiful and adorable young girl was replaced by the woman who had been giving him nightmares. There she stood in completely black outfits, black robes, black hair, and a black, disturbing mask of a vicious ghost, highly resembling the Grim Reaper who had just emerged from hell. You? He only managed to say something in a hoarse whisper. Gu Shijio had returned to her usual appearance. While Shen Yinma was busy playing the lute, she quickly made her change of wardrobe in a dark corner. Within seconds, she changed into her usual look very quickly without alarming Shin Yinma. The purpose of a change was to let the child recognize her true identity. She knew that the child used to be intimidated by her image. By throwing the gloom at him again, she believed that he would no longer be able to flirt with her. To her delight, she gave him a tight smile. "What is it? Little Nianma, can you recognize me?" With a note of mockery in her voice, she sounded, once again, like the mysterious woman. "Now I see. It has always been you," he answered coldly with a profound look in his eyes. "It is I," Gu Shijio continued. "Now you know that I have always been truthful to you." Shin Nianma pinched his lips into a thin line and made no further comment. Gu Shijio ignored him and walked toward the snake. "I did not know that you can manipulate the snakes." Impressive. The snakes were completely worn out, so they did not struggle when she made her hunt. She caught them up at their vital points and placed them in a bag. A few moments later, she had collected almost half of the snakes. The snake pearl was still rolling on the ground, glittering with immense radiance. Gu Shijio picked it up and rolled it playfully in her hand. "Take it," she demanded, and threw the pearl at him. The snake pearl was indeed precious. Gu Shijio was drawn to its rarity, but she did not want to covet the child's possession. Shun Yinma was caught in his contemplation when Gu Shijio handed him the pearl, so he received it without a second thought. Suddenly, he had a premonition of a disaster. "No!" He quickly threw the pearl back to the circle of snakes. However, he was not quick enough. Gu Shijio was trying to catch a fiery red snake that was lying quietly on the ground, but all of a sudden it rose and bit Gu Zijia's hand. Gu Shijio did not see it coming, so her middle finger was unfortunately bitten. She was shocked. Immediately, she hit the snake right at its head. The snake was dead instantaneously. Dark green blood started oozing from the wound on her middle finger, giving her severe pain. Luckily, Shun Nianma returned the pearl in time. Under the influence of the pearl, the remaining snakes were down before they were chaotically revived. The loot did not only cause the collapse of the snakes in an undignified heap. Rather, it was a joint effect of the loot and the snake pearl. When Gu Shijio handed the pearl back to Shun Nianma, she had also accidentally disarmed the spell that bounded the snakes. As a result, she had to pay the price for her thoughtless mistake. Gu Zijia's extraordinary physical condition enabled her to survive the bite, as long as she was able to consume the cure in time. The moment when she was bitten, she immediately reached into her storage bag to look for the cure. What she did not expect was the strength of the poison. It was unusually venomous, making her suffer unbearable pain. The pain greatly affected her nervous system. Immediately, the pain was spread from her finger to her entire body. Her active fingers started to tremble with a feeling of numbness. Her sense of touch was greatly reduced. For a while, she could not find the bottle of medicine that she carried in her storage space. Anxiety took over. The more anxious she was, the quicker the poison spread. The pain was starting to get beyond her level of endurance. Slowly, she was about to suffer from blackouts. Dazzled, she could feel an arm around her when she collapsed. Swiftly, he took off her mask. Gu Shijio was surprised, but she was unable to react. A pill was then stuffed into her mouth. "Swallow it," he demanded. The pill tasted very bitter and fishy. Gu Shijio was determined to swallow it, but she could not push it down her throat. She tried hard, but the pill still remained on her tongue. "I thought you were not concerned about the poison from the snakes." She could hear Shin Nianma blabbering in a hoarse voice. Soon, she could feel something warm and supple against her soft lips. Also, her tightly clenched teeth were pushed open. His tongue then entered her mouth to help her push the pill down her throat. She could feel his cold skin on her neck. He gently caressed her neck to help her swallow the pill. Although she had taken the pill, the effect would not be immediate. Gu Shijio was in such great pain that she could barely stand. He lay her down on the floor with her head on his lap. Gu Shijio was still consciousness at the time. She knew that someone was holding her finger and forcing the toxic blood out from her body. She was impressed by his great tact in dealing with a snake-bitten wound. She knew that it was Shun Nianma who was taking care of her at the moment. The child did not maltreat an injured person. Instead, he chose to save her. Presumably, he did not bear a grudge or revolt against her. Gu Shijio was thankful for his help. Suddenly, she could tell that he was putting her wounded finger in his mouth. She was very surprised. Was he going to suck the toxic blood out of the wound? The venom was unusually potent. If he were not careful, he could infect himself as well. Intuitively, she tried to pull her finger out. No way, she weakly said. Her strength was certainly incomparable to his at the moment. Before she could get her finger out of his mouth, he was already grabbing her wrist. Be still. Don't move, Shinyama softly demanded. Gu Shijio was unable to struggle. Meanwhile, she also felt that he sounded as though he was comforting a child. Shin Yanma continued to suck the toxic blood from the wound. She could feel her finger in his mouth. Initially, her aching finger was numb, dulling her sense of touch. As the toxic blood continued to exit her body, she could feel her fingers slowly being more responsive. When he sucked at her finger, the sensation was beyond her expression. She felt a little weak, as the delightful sensation on her fingers slowly took over her mind. She tried to suppress the odd feelings while the pill she consumed earlier started to take effect. The pain was greatly reduced, and so was the numbness. Soon, her agility returned. Quickly, she reached into her storage bag to look for the medicine. Her medicine was made specifically to counter the venom, so it would be more effective. Don't move. He caught her at the wrist again. I want to take the medicine. I will do it for you. He reached out into her bag and asked, which one? The storage bag was located on the upper part of her chest. It was not a sensitive part of her body, but he still had to expose that particular part of her clothes to reach into the bag. Her breasts were partly exposed, too. Gu Shijio had an attractive figure. Her body was particularly curvy, with breasts that swelled out perfectly. Even with her breasts only partly exposed, the view alone was arousing. Shin Yinma wanted to take the medicine for her, so his hand would unavoidably touch the upper part of her chest. Her skin was soft and supple. He could feel the warmth radiating off it. His hand was frozen momentarily when he made contact with her skin, but he did not pull away. Instead, he reached out into her storage bag. Which bottle? There were too many bottles in the space. Although Shin Yinma was knowledgeable in medicine, he could not differentiate which was which in a short time. The red and blue jade bottles. He finally found the bottle. Immediately, he fixed her clothes for her. The medicine was for oral administration and external use. After the application, Gu Shijio was more relieved. She suffered less pain and no longer felt like she was going to black out. She managed to sit, though with difficulty, and mediate. The venom of the snake would specifically attack her nervous system, while the spread of the poison in her body was too quick. Although Shen Yinma had sucked and extracted most of the poison out of her body, some still lingered in her blood. A few moments later, a drop of dark purple venom could be seen exiting her body through her fingertips. She opened her eyes, and the first thing she saw was her usual white and fair finger. The remaining poison was gone. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she turned and fixed her eyes on Shen Yinma. He was clearing the bodies of the remaining snakes. The way he handled the snakes was very violent, considering that all of them were dead. Gu Shijio was shocked. She wanted to collect the snakes for medical use. Most of the time, the alchemy would require the venom of the snakes. She could only extract their venoms when they were alive. Hence, their dead bodies would no longer be useful. It was such a waste. In a blink of an eye, she immediately noticed that there was still a snake wriggling slowly not too far away from Shin Yinma. It was still alive. Before Shin Yinma could do anything to it, Gu Shijio took a quick leap forward. Keep the snake. I need alive. She had just recovered from the injury, so she was definitely slower paced than Shin Yinma. She failed to reach the snake before the kid. With the snake in his hand, Shin Yinma then retreated to keep a distance away from her. At first, the snake looked somewhat distorted under his tight grip. With a strong flick, the snake immediately softened into a line. Apparently, The snake was dead. I told you that I needed it alive, Gu Shijio complained. Shen Yinma was unimpressed. Why should I listen to you? Gu Shijio did not say anything more. She should not mind it, for he had saved her life. She did not want to argue with him over an irrelevant matter. She swept her eyes across the snakes that were unfortunately killed by Shen Yinma. Their bodies were tidily arranged into a circle according to their patterns and types. Needless to say, it was Shen Yinma who had done it. The child must have obsessive-compulsive disorder about tidiness. None of the snakes was the one that she was looking for. They had to keep looking. Gu Shijio disregarded the bodies of the snakes and decided to move on. We have to keep looking. The cherry blossom snake is not here. By the way, I have to tell you this in advance. We have to keep the snake alive. It will be useless once dead. We will not be able to save the lives of your junior apprentices. Shen Yinma had a perplexed look on his face. He thought that the snake bodies would antagonize her, but she did not seem to take the matter very personally. Obviously, he was only a child to her, so she did not want to lower herself to the level of a child. He clenched his fists at the thought. Nonetheless, he continued to follow her steps. I have saved your life, Shen Yinma finally commented. Yes, I now owe you a favor. Do you still want me to call you as my senior apprentice? Gu Shijio thought about the condition that he had previously offered. It is unnecessary, Shen Yinma answered coldly. Suddenly, he raised her arm to get her attention on his wrist. A bracelet slowly revealed itself. Take this bracelet off me, Shen Yinma demanded. He needed her to get it done. Gu Shijio did not know how to respond. Can't you take the bracelet off yourself? Hesitantly, Gu Shijio asked. Have you no knowledge about your previous possession? Shen Yinma questioned. Gu Shijio coughed. This was not always mine. I was acting under orders to find its true master. Were you following me under orders? Whose orders? I have nothing to tell. She could not simply tell him about the heavenly laws. Otherwise, the act would be considered as a breach. Shen Yinma looked at her with apathy. How did you know I was its true master? Gu Shijio frowned, struggling to find an explanation. Did her intuition count as a legit answer? She only found him based on her intuition. However, the explanation sounded rather abstract. He would not easily believe it. The method is of no importance. The important thing is that you are truly its master. Regarding the box, only its true master can open a box. Even I could not open the box myself, so I certainly did not know what was in there. Shen Yinma fixed his eyes on her expression. He had a profound look in his eyes. He hugged his arms and continued. Are you saying that even you cannot take the bracelet off? Gu Shijio hesitated before offering. Do you want me to try? Great. Shen Yinma reached his hand out for her to try. Gu Shijio finally had a clearer view of the bracelet. Its texture seemed to be richer than before. Indistinctly, its appearance was translucent with 7 colored rays, looming up through its misty and rosy cloud patterns. It was far more beautiful than any other bracelets that Gu Shijio had ever seen. The bracelet hung perfectly on his wrist. It suited him just right, like it was meant to be his. The bracelet looks beautiful. Why do you want to take it off? It is here against my will. I will not take it, no matter how beautiful it looks. Shen Yinma obviously disapproved of the bracelet. He liked the joy of freedom, but was unfortunately hooked with the bracelet. It shimmered gloriously, which was something that he did not prefer. Moreover, the bracelet was from the person who had been giving him nightmares, which made him dislike the bracelet even more. Throughout the years, he had tried many ways to get the bracelet off but failed. Now that he had finally met the person who was responsible for the bracelet, he would not let the opportunity slip. When he was forced to wear the bracelet, he had even thought that it was the ugly and disturbing woman's trick to manipulate him. When he was older, he changed his mind and thought that the woman might fancy him. He had expected her to show up once in a while to remind him of her presence. To his surprise, the woman disappeared entirely for many years. He later found out that the woman had a rather low profile in the continent. Her appearance was merely a flash, no matter where she went. Also, she was not very sociable. He asked many people about her, but not many had the answers. Regarding the case of the missing children, He had once thought that she was the chief conspirator behind the case. He interrupted the investigation to winkle her out. Surprisingly, she showed up in another way. He did not know what to feel the moment she revealed her true self, so he stood by staring blankly, lost in thoughts. Just when he was all caught up in his thoughts, the snake seized the window and bit her. When he saw that she was poisoned, he quickly supported her with hand. His only thought at the moment was to keep her alive. He had finally found her after so long, so he could not simply watch her die. He also discovered that she was the big sister who had once sent him home many years ago. The moment he took off her mask was when he found out about the shocking truth. He was astonished. Gu Shijio had been full of surprises since the beginning. He could hardly handle it anymore. He ground his teeth with rage. If her life were not at stake, he would have left her. This woman had made her appearance in so many different forms. What did she want exactly? She appeared and disappeared so mysteriously every time. When he intended to search for her, she never showed up. When he gave up on her, she suddenly reappeared. He could not figure out how he truly felt about her. There was a mixture of joy and rage, also some elements of hatred and surprise. He was overwhelmed with a strong wave of emotions. He could not pinpoint exactly how she made him feel. He only knew that he must keep her alive. Saving her life was the priority. He was obsessed with hygiene, so he hated it when others came too close to him. However, he did not have the same attitude towards her. Sometimes, he would even wish to pull her close into his embrace, to caress and protect her. He even kissed her when he was desperate to help her swallow the pill. He had set his heart to save her life, so he did not consider many other things. He would not rest until she was conscious and finally found the strength to sit up. He had even contributed his first kiss in order to save her life. That was a huge sacrifice because he once hated this woman the most. His mother had once told him that his first kiss must be reserved for the one he liked the most. Only then it would become a pleasant memory. His father and mother kept their first kisses for one another. As for his, he submitted it so casually. Was he being possessed? Was he not thinking straight? Shen Yinma was oppressed with the thought, so he had to vent his anger on the snakes. He knew that Gu Shijio wanted the snakes alive, so he killed them on purpose in order to go against her wish. Surely, Gu Shijio was not sure of all the thoughts that were going on in his head. Meanwhile, she was focusing entirely on the bracelet. She roughly remembered that the bracelet used to be in the shape of a small dragon. The bracelet was formed when its head was assembled to the tail. Probably, there would be an opening mechanism somewhere. She was looking for the lock, hoping that she could get the bracelet off his wrist. Gu Shijio did not want to owe anyone favors. Shen Yinma had saved her life, so she would do anything to fulfill his requests. After a long time, the bracelet was still very much intact, even though she had tried many different ways to open it. There was not even a single crack. She tried to pull the bracelet off, but it could not go past his wrist. It really was not meant to be taken off. Moreover, it had even grown bigger to suit the size of his hand as he became older. It fitted him just right. Gu Shijio kept trying, but nothing worked. Shen Yinma's hand started to sweat. She resigned with a sigh. "I am sorry. There really is no way." She looked up and froze momentarily. Their eyes met as soon as she raised her head. His eyes were staring fixedly at her face. Gu Shijio took a step back. Intuitively, she tried to touch her face and realized that her mask had been taken off. He was looking straight at her face right now. She knew that she had a beautiful face, but he did not seem amazed by her beauty. She was uncomfortable under his intense eyes, so she took another step back and asked, "Why are you looking at me like that? How many identities do you actually have? How many times have you showed up in front of me?" Shen Yinma continued to stare at her. Gu Shijio frowned in bewilderment. "Only these two. What do you mean by how many identities?" "Two? As far as I am concerned, there are three." Gu Shijio failed to recall. "Three? Which was the third one?" "I remember the time when you were in your feminine form, with Long Sai by your side. You sent me home before as my big sister." Shen Yinma answered, half-jokingly. Gu Shijio paused for a while to think about it. It seemed the young man did recall. "Why did you make your appearance in so many different forms. What do you want from me? Aren't you tired, having to change from one identity to another? Shin Yinma took another quiet but intimidating step towards her. Gu Shijio smacked her head. Nianma, call me Fui. Gu Shijio raised her arms as if surrendering. All right, Fui, I believe we may have a misunderstanding here. I appeared a few times before because I suspected that you were the target of my mission, so I had to observe you before I made any conclusion. I know that I have scared you before, but have I actually harmed you? It was a mere coincidence when I sent you home at that time. I did not intend to show up in front of you that night. Moreover, I only took the form of a child this time in order to be caught. I needed to make the investigation myself. I did not know at all that I was going to see you here. What surprised me more was that you grew so much in just 5 years. It came as a shock when she found out that he was Shun Yinma. She suspected that he must have taken some kind of growth hormone to help him grow. Shin Yinma explained slowly, I am the son of a celestial being and a devil. Surely, I am different from ordinary people. I am no longer a child. Gu Shijio was certainly impressed. Your genetics are undoubtedly amazing. My father became a grown-up when he was only a year old. There really is nothing strange. It was indeed a privilege to be born as the next of kin of the union of a celestial and devil. Unlike Gu Shijio, who had to go through many hardships in order to get to where she was now. However, his progressive growth was not entirely because of his genetics. He was also the reincarnation of the master of heavenly law. Gu Shijio recalled the appearance of the master of heavenly law. Although she did not see his face very clearly, she could remember how he made her feel. His elegant grace and tremendous influence closely resembled Shin Nianmo's. Certainly, Shin Nianmo's influence was not as strong as the master of heavenly law that she had met before. He was, after all, a child. Someday, she believed that she would become a really powerful man. He took 6 years to achieve the level of a golden immortal. With that progress, he would become a mighty immortal within a decade. Her mission was to help him achieve the level of a mighty immortal in exchange for Huang Tu's revival. She was excited at the thought of that, so she gave Shen Nianma an enthusiastic look. Nianma, oh no, Fui, would you like to increase your power tremendously? Perplexed, Shen Nianma responded with a look of confusion. What about that? On her palm, Gu Shijio showed him a purple, lustrous pill. I have collected an effective pill that will help you to increase your strength quickly. I can give this to you as a gift. You could try it and see your progress. Shen Nianma picked it up and observed it carefully. Did you make this? He could not help but ask. Yes, I did not expect that. This is a level 8 pill. There are not many alchemists who are as skilled as you even in this celestial demon continent. Gu Shijio was flattered. Of course, I am an expert in alchemy. There's rarely anyone who can achieve the same excellence as I do. Shen Nianma looked at the pill with a peculiar expression. The pill shone with brilliant luster, but he could not figure out the ingredients of the pill at all, even though he was an expert in medicine. He put the pill away in a storage bag, so he could study it properly when he got home. He had seen many pills that could advance one's spiritual power, except this one. In fact, the cultivation of one's spiritual power had to be done in an orderly way with a painstaking amount of effort. It was not advisable to depend on the pills alone. Otherwise, one's cultivation might easily go haywire. Also, most of the pills contained vicious elements that came with side effects. Shen Nianmo's father reserved a lot of miraculous medicines and elixirs for him, but all of them were to maintain his health and were not for the advancement of his spiritual power. Shen Juli once told him that the administration of pills would spoil the entire cultivation by destroying the very conditions upon which success depended. Yet, Gu Shijio had given him a pill. Was Gu Shijio very desperate for his advancement? I remember that you wanted to take me as your disciple. Shen Nianma asked very suddenly. Yes, but you refused to. Why? Have you changed your mind? Gu Zijia's eyes danced with merriment. Definitely not. Shen Nianma shattered her hope directly. Gu Shijio studied his expression and continued. Why have you asked then? Now that you know who I really am, You should know that I'm not any worse than any of your 10 masters. In fact, I am probably stronger. I am skilled in the use of poisons, spells, and array formation. Gu Shijio named a few of her special abilities. I know as much, or even more than all the skills that your masters have to offer. If you accept me as your master, I will definitely help you to increase your spiritual power in no time and achieve greater successes. Shin Yinma interrupted. Do not even think about it. I will never agree to become your disciple. Gu Shijio did not know what to say. She could only settle as his senior apprentice then. If he was not willing to be her disciple, why did he even bother to ask? She thought there was hope. I have noticed that you are very much interested in my advancement. Is it your mission as well? Shin Yinma asked the right question. Gu Shijio did not answer his question. Shin Yinma continued to pressure her with his intense gaze. Is it really a mission? The child was indeed smart. How did he manage to conjecture that? Gu Shijio hesitated. We should not focus too much on the mission. You should know that I am doing this for your own good. Isn't it good if I can help you in your advancement? He was right. It was a mission. If it were not for the mission, she would not even bother to stay close to him at all. Shin Yinma stared at her blankly for a while. Abruptly, he rose and left. Gu Shijio was utterly surprised. Was he upset? Why? She was confused. He was only a child of incalculable moods. Maybe he was starting to experience his teenage revolt in advance. Many speculations flashed by in her head, but she still could not figure out why. She decided to leave the subject behind and focus instead on the cherry blossom snake. There were two people whose lives depended on her. They continued to explore the tunnel for another half an hour. Meanwhile, Shin Yinma used the snake pearl to attract the snake 2 more times but failed both times. Finally, on the last try, the snake appeared. The snake was covered entirely in pitch-black skin, which was about 1 foot long. It was as thin as the size of a chopstick. Despite its size, it was the leader of the snakes. It moved very swiftly and was hard to spot. Also, it was capable to spout out venom in the color of faint cherry pink. It was the most beautiful and yet the most venomous kind. Gu Shijio was experienced, so she managed to catch in the end. The search was not in vain. They had time, so Gu Shijio decided to stay and explore the entire tunnel. Along their way, they managed to decipher many deadly tricks that were set in the tunnel. Finally, they arrived at the end. The end of the tunnel led them to an area of open water. The place was unusually cold. Many flower buds floated graciously on the surface. The place that surrounded the tree palace was mysterious. Gu Shijio felt as though she had just stepped into a utopia of flower blossoms. The banks of the lake were filled with blossoming trees, forming an array of cherry blossoms. The view was spectacular. She must have escaped from here, riding a crane. Shin Yinma took a walk around the area and found the traces left behind by the young palace master. Gu Shijio acknowledged Shun Nianmo's findings. The celestial cranes were the most popular rides in the celestial world. If the young palace master escaped with a crane, it would be difficult to find her. The young palace master had definitely prepared for an escape. Therefore, the search would not be easy. Mountains with steep, rocky cliffs surrounded the place. Even the slopes glittered with more cherry blossoms. The intense greenery contrasted a waterfall emerging from the depths of the mountains that went straight into a pool of water. The flower buds of crimson red danced gracefully in the gusts of wind, filling the air with delightful fragrances. Some of the buds fell onto the surface as the breeze continued to carry them away from their branches. They looked up and realized that the sky was covered with a layer of fog in crimson red. They could not see anything beyond the fog. The red mist was the legendary cherry blossom miasma. The vapor was extremely poisonous. Without a proper cure, any living being who passed by the area would be poisoned to death, which explained the serenity of the place without any traces of living creatures. We should split and search the place, Gu Shijio suggested. She was hoping to find some clues. After all, the place was the secret garden of the young palace master. Shin Yinma agreed and proceeded. Ever since he found out about her true identity, he had been treating her rather coldly. They barely talked. Gu Shijio regretted that she revealed her true self so quickly, but at least he finally stopped flirting with her. However, he seemed to take prudent precautions against her. She knew it when he kept the pill away instead of swallowing it. He did not trust her. If things did not change, it would be difficult for her to train him in the future. Nonetheless, she should leave the matter now and attend to it later. She would improvise when the time came. It was neither the spring season of March nor April, but the cherry blossom was unusually spectacular, each blooming more brilliantly in the other's company. A walk in the garden, surrounded by these fantastic flowers, would be a very romantic walk. It would be such a happy time if a couple came and took a walk together, hand in hand. Gu Shijio recalled one of the hallucinations that occurred to her before. In the picture, she and Huang Tu spent some time in a garden of cherry blossoms. It must have been a very happy time. In the scene, they were walking very closely together. She hugged his arm and walked the path together. They must have been very deeply in love. Unfortunately, he had disappeared. She had also forgotten about their love story. When Shun Yimou finally returned to his position as the master of heavenly law, hopefully, he would find a way to revive Huang Tu. Swiftly, she walked the path in the garden while carefully observing her surroundings to find more traces. Soon, she found a trail. The garden was primitive. It was formed naturally. She noticed its primary ecosystem by looking at the thorns that covered the ground. The trail, however, was looking a little odd. It was certainly not built, but formed due to frequent steps taken along the path. Did the young master come here very often? Gu Shijio observed the trail and found something strange. Human steps did not only cover the trail, but it also bore evidence of a wheelchair. She followed the trail and continued to explore. The route was remote and tortuous. She wriggled through and finally arrived at a cliff. From the top, the water formed a cascade down the mountain. The rushing water acted like curtains, covering almost the entire wall of the cliff. Gu Shijio focused on the cliff, but could hardly find anything odd. However, her intuition told her that something must be wrong about the place. She took a leap and landed on a rock at the bottom of the falls. She knocked on the wall and realized that it was not solid. It must be a cave. Gu Shijio knocked and tapped around the place, and finally found a small switch. After pressing on it, a tunnel suddenly appeared. Gu Shijio looked inside through the cascading curtains of water. She could not see anything as the tunnel was dark inside. Who is it? A voice emerged from inside the tunnel that was accompanied by the sound of chains being dragged across the floor. Gu Zijia's heart skipped a beat. This voice sounded somewhat familiar. She dashed inside the deep tunnel. After a few twists and turns, she finally encountered what seemed to be a person. She also saw some light. The source of the shimmer was the gleaming, luminous pearls embedded along the walls. As the quality of the pearls was only normal, its dull shine could only cover a small area in the cave. The person was sitting on a wheelchair and clothed in a faint white shirt. His long hair draped all over his upper body. There was a small portion that swayed in front of his forehead, nearly fully obstructing his face, while the remaining portion fell behind his back. His wrists and ankles were bound with magic iron chains that were hung up high on the walls of the cave. The chains clanged against each other along with his movements. He seemed to have heard Gu Shijio entering. He rose his head slowly and spoke in a cold voice. "Who are you? Another agent of hers?" He paused as his eyes fixed on Gu Shijio. "Are you Shijio?" Gu Zijia's eyes widened as well in astonishment. Yin Yanli? He was the Yin Yanli that had gone missing for several years. The once handsome prince had fallen into such disgrace, even causing the astute Gu Shijio to fail to recognize him. Gu Shijio heard all about his tragic afflictions in the past few years. His experience was dreary but straightforward. He had fallen into a coma on the battlefield and woke up in this cave to find a lady garmented in boy's clothing who called herself a young palace master. He had suffered a heavy injury and would have lost his life if it were not for the young palace master treating and healing him. He had thought of her as a savior at first, but she started to question him about some concerning things regarding heaven. He was naturally skeptical and did not answer. The lady started to lose her patience and imprisoned him in this place, subjecting him to physical and verbal torture every 3 to 5 days, and occasionally even sending half-orcs to do the job. Soon after, the lady stopped interrogating him, but told him that his family had met complete devastation. She claimed that his father and brothers have died at the hands of demons, while all of his subordinates have either surrendered or perished. The new emperor was his former friend, Yi Qianli. She said that he was the only remaining member of the Yun family, and wanted him to write a letter to his former subordinates to wage war and restore his family's former glory. Yin Yanli did not believe a word of her narrative of his family's tragedy, dismissing all of it as lies. The young palace master became enraged and reviled him as scum and subhuman, thereby treating him as a human guinea pig for drugs. And just like that, he was locked up in here for several years. As he was subject to heavy testing for a significant amount of time, his legs eventually became crippled. The young palace master probably thought that there was still some utility in him and kept him alive, even bringing him out to bask in the sunlight on occasion. As Yin Yanli had been imprisoned for several years, he was naturally delighted when he saw Gu Shijio and struck up a long conversation with her. As Gu Shijio listened to him, she tried to find a way to unlock the magic iron chains. The lock was crafted intricately and could not be opened by most people. But fortunately for him, Gu Shijio was unlike most people. Therefore, by the time Yin Yanli had finished sharing his story, she had unlocked the chains. It was only when Gu Shijio released Yin Yanli from the chains that she understood his true suffering. The magic iron chains that fettered Yin Yanli's wrists and ankles had spikes protruding from inside that sunk right into his flesh and bone. She could hardly unfetter the chains without further damaging his bone, leaving behind a harrowing sight of blood. Yin Yanli was Gu Zijia's trusty and precious companion in this world. He had offered a lot of help to Gu Shijio in the past as well. Now that he has fallen into this state, she naturally felt sorrowful and used her best endeavors to heal his many injuries. Without even pausing to think, she took out her best medicine and applied it on his wounds. "Shijio, is my family still well?" What the young palace master said must be false, right? Yin Yanli finally asked the question he was concerned about the most. Gu Zijia's fingers halted for a second. How should she tell him everything about the former emperor immortal? She was not entirely clear about the matter, as well as she had only heard bits about it. But the collapse of the Yun family was indeed true. Pausing for a moment, she then told Yin Yanli gently, "Your father and elder brother have gone missing. No one knows where they are now. The new emperor is indeed Yi Tianli." Yin Yanli's complexion turned pale. They really have. It was really the work of that devil Xiuma. Gu Shijio shook her head. Things didn't go as simple as what she had said. "From what I know, your father had conspired with his substitute divine god against Suimo's mother and son, almost sundering the both of them apart. You should investigate into this yourself to know more about it once you get out of here." The news did not hit Yin Yanli well. He sat motionlessly in astonishment. Gu Shijio did not try consoling him. The grief of these matters was inconsolable. Since Yin Yanli was of royal blood, he should know all about the personality of his father. Once anything relates to power, morals, and ethics become obsolete. His father got what was coming to him and deserved no sympathy. However, as Yin Yanli was the prince of the previous dynasty, it was natural for him to feel anguish. All she could do was hope that he would walk out of his pain soon. "Your mother and sister are still alive. They have been arranged to settle down at a small palace and are living a good life. You can visit them after you get out of here." Yin Yanli sighed lightly. His pallid complexion had been restored with some color. "I will." Although he did not believe in what the young palace master had said before, he still had some skepticism over the veracity of the matter. Therefore, Gu Shijio had only confirmed his fearful suspicions. "Shijio, how have you been the past few years?" "Quite well. Have you met the person you wanted to meet?" "I guess that is the case. Really?" Yin Yanli's eyes brightened up. "That's great. You've searched for him for long enough. It has been a few hundred years. I felt sad for you at that time, when you went to the heavens to look for him. Which mighty immortal is he now? I have to know him. Shijio, is he your significant other? Gu Shijio froze. The image of Shun Nianma flashed before her mind, causing her brain to falter. She replied sternly, "He is not a mighty immortal. Also, the reason I looked for him was strictly professional and for a mission. He is not my significant other." I see. Since you found him, does that mean your mission is complete? Gu Shijio shook her head. Looking for him is only one part of the mission. I have not completed it yet. Yin Yanli was astounded. It's still not complete yet? What else do you need to do? Gu Shijio massaged her temples. Bring him up to shape. This task was as difficult as the previous one. That brat was quite hard to deal with. Yin Yanli stammered before regaining himself. Bring him up to shape? So that means he's still a child? Before Gu Shijio was going to say anything, she seemed to notice something and turned to look behind. Shin Yinma was standing at a short distance away from her. He was wearing a vulpine mask that carried an indecipherable expression while revealing the jet-black pupils of his eyes. When did this brat come in? How did he do so without making a single sound? Was he that skilled? Nian, Fui, when did you come here? Gu Shijio did not want to separate him from his original identity, as she wanted to keep the warm relations between them to ease up the long training process. Shiniamo's eyes first swept over her, and then to Yin Yanli. He replied lightly, I just arrived. In reality, he had come in the instance Gu Shijio freed Yin Yanli from his chains, so he had heard the whole latter half of their conversation. Shin Yinma leaned on a boulder and did not approach them. Yin Yanli shot him a glance. And you are? Gu Zijia's head ached. The two people in front of her are supposed to be enemies, logically speaking. Yin Yanli's father had acted against Shin Yinma before, while Shin Yanmo's mother is indirectly responsible for the sudden absence of the former emperor and the downfall of the Yin family. It was a huge relief that both of them have not embroiled in a conflict yet. For Yin Yanli's case, it was easy to explain. He was now wounded and only possessed half of his normal external abilities. He was also a gentle and magnanimous person, so he would not shift the blame of the matter to Shin Yinma. But it was harder to say for Shun Yinma. His temperament was marked by eccentricity. Once he knows Yin Yanli's identity, he might just kill him right there and put matters to a close. Therefore, she tried to answer Yin Yanli's question in an obscure fashion. He is my junior, Fui. Yin Yanli raised his eyebrow. Is it Prince Fui? He turned to Gu Shijio again. The young palace master had mentioned Prince Fui to me recently. Shijio, I didn't know that you had a junior here. You found a master, then? Whose disciple are you? It's hard to think of anyone who is worthy of being your master. So you've heard of my name? Shin Yinma chuckled. His voice was gentle and graceful. After exchanging greetings with Yin Yanli politely, he walked up front and held Gu Zijia's hand. I never thought that she would be my junior as well. She had put a lot of effort for me. All right, Shijio, our master is still waiting for our medicine, so let's get going soon. Gu Shijio had never thought that he would hold her hand. She tried to break free from his grip, but to no avail. Yin Yanli was dumbfounded. Juniors to each other? Which one of you is elder? Ask again in a year. Shin Yinma finally let go of his grasp. Shijio, I can't believe that you've met an old friend here who really needs help. Have you thought of how to rescue him? Gu Shijio could not help but steal a glance at him. When that fella called her Shijio, it sounded all too natural, as if he had always been addressing her that way. He was just calling her by the name Chongsheng just now. It seemed that he had heard much of the conversation between Yin Yanli and her, so he knew her real name. Of course, let's push it out. Gu Shijio immediately pushed Yin Yanli's wheelchair and walked away. Shin Yanmo's lips curved upward slightly. It seems like this man is not only unable to walk, but unable to use his hands as well. Yin Yanli was speechless. He was an astute character, so he said, Shijio, let me do it myself. He was, in fact, able to push himself. Gu Shijio looked at Yin Yanli's wrist, which was still covered in fresh blood, and cut him right off. There is no need. She stole another glance at Shun Yin Ma, mused, and took out the cherry blossom snake. She extracted the snake's poison, filled it in a small bottle, and handed it to Shin Yin Ma. Fui, you can go back first. This poison has been diluted by 100 times through the water from the glacier and was added with Lanyue grass. She laid out in detail the ingredients of the medicine and eventually said, "Your juniors are in critical condition now. Let them each take this medicine and then use your spiritual powers to help them to detoxify their bodies. Remember to put on a mask and gloves when approaching them." "My juniors, are they not your juniors?" Shen Nianma asked in return. Of course, they're mine as well." That kid tends to find fault in what she said. "All right, they are our juniors. What about you?" Shen Nianmo's eyes were gloomy. "Brother Yun's injury needs to be attended to immediately. We will split up, and I will visit you guys again after 3 days." "Whatever." Shen Nianma turned and left without any sign of reluctance. Gu Shijio was stunned for a moment. Seeing his figure disappear, she felt indecipherable remorse in her heart. Yin Yanli was somewhat regretful as well. "Shijio, your junior seems to be rather unhappy. It is all my fault starting a conflict between the both of you, no problem. He is just childish. It will all be fine soon." Gu Shijio pushed him out of the cave. "I have inspected your injury. The poison has hurt your veins, and to top it with the fact that you have been rather impatient at training, you're in deep trouble, so much so that you lost control of both your legs. However, it is not incurable. Wait until I bring you out. We can look for a place to let you bathe with a couple of herbs, and with my spells, you could recover within 3 days." Gu Shijio had great medicinal skills. She had already inspected his veins while helping him to break free from the chains. Yin Yanli's injury was, in fact, not lethal. It was only because he had failed to get immediate treatment and was being experimented with different medicines that he ended up that way. Yin Yanli had been helping her a lot in the past. Throughout the few hundred years, he had been by her side as she paid the mighty immortals numerous visits. He had devoted his time and effort, so Gu Shijio was indebted to him. Now that he was in trouble, it was only natural for her to help him with all her abilities. She pushed him out to the tortuous cherry blossom forest and towards the side of a deep pond. The hills and cliffs surrounded them. To leave the place, they would have to ride on a bird or something, or by following the original route towards the tree palace and exit from there. Gu Shijio was carrying Yun Yanli, so she was unable to fly over. She was considering going through the tree palace when suddenly the sound of a bird broke the silence of the sky, and 2 huge birds emerged from within the clouds and landed between Yun Yanli and her. Purple feathers and a green abdomen, with jade-green tips at the wings. They were as big as storks and looked as grim as can be. Gu Zijia's heart stopped for a moment. Were these 2 birds the legendary birds with poisonous feathers? Such birds were a real rarity in the world. It was even more uncommon to spot 2 at the same time. This kind of bird was extraordinarily poisonous and was immune to any sort of poison. That was why they were able to pass through the blossom garden mist from the above. The 2 birds looked incredibly proud as they kept their chests up. One of the birds tilted its head to the side and looked at Gu Shijio. It suddenly spoke to her. "We will bring you there." Gu Shijio was puzzled. "She seek more information. Who is your master? We will bring you there." The bird only reiterated. Perhaps it only knew that sentence. Gu Shijio was somewhat disappointed. However, with the 2 birds before her, it meant that her biggest problem had been solved and she would not have to take the long way through the tree palace. Each bird could accommodate 1 rider comfortably, but 2 was rather tricky. Yin Yanli wanted to keep his dignity. He did not want Gu Shijio to take care of him as if he was a paralyzed person. He hit his palm on the ground and pushed himself up onto the back of one of the birds. Gu Shijio saw that he was rather agile. Hence, she was not too concerned. She then hopped onto the back of the other bird. The birds then flapped their wings and took off. Fortunately, along the way, Gu Shijio realized that the 2 birds could understand her. Therefore, she could instruct them on the directions. They immediately flew to a nearby city and landed in a restaurant. Those kinds of birds were extremely rare. So, when Gu Shijiao and Yun Yanli touched down, they caused a sensation and invited the people to crowd them. Is this the legendary bird with poisonous feathers? This is the kind with crested heads, much more exotic than the normal ones. The kind with crested heads? I heard that Di Fui had tamed a pair of such birds a year ago. Could this pair be his? It couldn't be. Di Fui always takes extremely good care of his birds and would never lend them to anyone. These two are not Di Fui's. Or could these two be friends of Di Fui? Since it is only Di Fui alone who has tamed such birds, they could only belong to him. Definitely. People were gossiping, and Gu Shijiao could finally determine who was the owner of the pair of birds. It seemed that Shen Yinma was worried about her. Perhaps he was afraid that Yun Yanli and her could not leave the area. She felt a warmth gush in her heart and extended her arm to tap the wings of the birds. Help me send my gratitude to your master. The two birds were proud. After dropping Gu Shijiao and Yun Yanli off, they flapped their wings and flew away, without even looking at the crowd. It seemed that Di Fui was popular in the area. Due to the birds, the cafe was fully occupied, but the owner still offered them 2 guest rooms for free as his courtesy to Di Fui. Gu Shijiao was contented. She never thought that Shen Yinma could achieve such great things even at such a young age. He was indeed talented. Gu Shijiao quickly settled their accommodation and immediately attended to Yun Yanli's injury. Gu Shijiao was modest in terms of keeping a certain distance between them. She respected that they had different genders. She did not want to always spend time alone with Yun Yanli. Hence, she used her directed audio to get into contact with Long Sai. Long Sai arrived shortly, in just 30 minutes. Long Sai was very capable and respected by Emperor Yi Tianli. He had ascended to the position of a general since he came to the Upper Bound. With considerable authority at his hands, he could be considered a level 3 official now. Yun Yanli was once the superior of Long Sai. Therefore, Long Sai was indebted to Yun Yanli and was comforted seeing that he was safe. Naturally, Long Sai agreed to help Gu Shijiao with treating Yun Yanli's injury. After talking for a bit, Gu Shijiao allowed Yun Yanli to meditate to facilitate his recovery while she went out to prepare the ingredients. Long Sai followed her and helped her. Shijiao. Long Sai was finding it hard to say what he wanted to say. Gu Shijiao took a glance at him. Yup, you may speak frankly. There is no need to beat around the bush with me. Long Sai was surprised by her frankness. He went straight to the point. Do you think your Royal Highness Yun's words are trustable? Gu Shijiao mused and tilted her head upwards to look at him. What are you suspicious about? Long Sai replied. I somehow feel that this is too much of a coincidence. It feels awry. Do you not find it suspicious at all? Gu Shijiao muttered under her breath. It is not that I have not found it suspicious. In fact, I suspect that he is the mastermind behind the young palace master. However, I have examined his injury, and it seemed more like a long-term injury. His legs were also paralyzed by poison. He had traces of drugs in his body that should be caused by taking too many medicinal drugs. The poison had entered his veins, and this could only happen after a matter of 3 to 5 years. Had this only been deceit to ask for my sympathy, it would not be this way. Long Sai heaved a sigh of relief and looked at Gu Shijiao with his eyes full of respect for her. Shijiao, you are indeed very meticulous. Gu Shijiao shook her head slightly. Had she not been meticulous, she would not have been alive. She did not want to hold her guard against her friends, but would instead want to go through life's ups and downs with them. However, had it been a friend that she had not met for a couple of years, she would still hold on to her guard, since a couple of years was enough to alter a person's character. Gu Shijiao mused for a moment and ordered Long Sai. Instructor Long, it will be better to keep the fact that Yun Yanli is still alive a secret from your majesty. Long Sai understood and nodded. Of course, only that. Is your Royal Highness all right with keeping his identity a secret? The master of the world had changed. If the prince of the old king is still alive, that would invite suspicion from the new king. According to the political norm, The new king would give his all in removing all remnants of the previous ruling, especially a price as ambitious as Yun Yanli. Although the new king had once worked under Yun Yanli, it did not mean that the new king would hold any empathy for Yun Yanli. So in order to continue living in the world, all Yun Yanli could do was to hide his identity. Gu Shijio had a headache as well. Yun Yanli was her friend that had helped her a lot back in the day, and she would not want to see anything bad happen to him. She could only take one step at a time. She would try her best to convince him to withdraw from politics. However, the final decision would be up to him. Gu Shijio attended to Yun Yanli's injury for 2 days. The process was somewhat complicated, and Long Sai had been by her side, assisting her all the time. 2 days later, Gu Shijio managed to remove all the remaining poison from Yun Yanli's body. However, since he had been poisoned for so many years, it was hard for his pulse to recover, and his external abilities had been diminished by half. The good thing was that, after the treatment, he could finally discard his wheelchair and stand on his feet. He could walk like normal, and could even use his spiritual power to lift himself. After he had recovered, he visited his sister's secluded palace. The siblings finally got to meet each other, and it was a bittersweet rendezvous. Yun Yanli was a child growing up from within the political turmoil. Hence, he was rather shrewd. Yun Yanli did not dare stay there for long. After having a chat that lasted about 2 hours with his sister, he bid his goodbye. While the siblings were speaking, Gu Shijio waited outside. She did not wish to pry. Since Princess Yun lived in a lush, secure forest above the 8th heaven, Yun Yanli would not be able to sneak himself to meet his sister with his current external abilities. When Yun Yanli came out, his eyes were red. It was obvious that he had cried in there. Gu Shijio did not say anything and simply brought him away. Gu Shijio led him away and arrived at the 6th level where the demons and immortals coexisted. She then asked him about his plans. Yun Yanli inhaled a breath of air and said wryly, "It has ended up this way. What else could I plan for? I hope to find my father first, since he is only missing." Gu Shijio shook her head in silence. Emperor Yun has been missing for such a long time. It would mean more bad news rather than good news. There was little possibility that he could still be alive. Looking for him would end up to no avail as well. She paused for a moment and said, "Your Highness, the change in empires happened by fate, as does among the immortals and the people of the land. An empire run entirely by a family would not last long. Your father's deeds when he ruled was not liked by the people either, and instead caused a wave of despair. Now that Yi Tianli rules the world, as you can see, the people are living a safe and prosperous life. Your Highness, you will need to be more open-minded and not be overly determined, or else you would inflict trouble upon yourself." Yun Yanli's dark eyes fell on her. "Shijio, I know that you say so for my own good. Only that he was not satisfied. The empire built by the Yun family had been substituted. He was once a member of the royal family, and now he had to instead scurry about hiding himself, not even able to reveal his true identity. He had to disguise himself when he went outdoors." Gu Shijio could understand him. However, if he did not learn to let go, he would only suffer. She could only help him to that point, so she tapped on Yun Yanli's shoulder and said, "Your Highness, you will need to learn to let go, especially when the circumstances have been finalized. Otherwise, you will only inflict problems onto yourself and not solve anything. With your abilities, even if you are no longer the king, you will be able to fare well in many aspects of your life. All right, I will stop right here. You can sleep on it. I am leaving." It was time for her to go and look for Shen Yinma. She could also check on whether the poison in her junior's body had been cured. Yun Yanli was somewhat reluctant. However, he did not know what plans Gu Shijio had. So he smiled and responded, "Shijio, I am heavily indebted to you. No matter how I turn out to be eventually, I would have regained my freedom, and hence, I would consider what you said. Is there any chance of us meeting again? If fate brings us together, we will see each other again one day." Gu Shijio did not turn back. Yun Yanli was sitting in the room while staring at where Gu Shijio before she disappeared. Moments later, he said, Shijio, I believe that we will meet each other again someday, and that day will arrive soon. Gu Shijio stood at the top floor of the building. She took out a directed audio talisman and closed her eyes for some time. She then started contacting Shen Yinma, and as usual, he did not show any sign of picking up. When she was going through danger in the tree palace with Shen Yinma, she gave him a directed audio talisman, saying that they could keep in touch with each other through the device. Since splitting with Shen Yinma, she had only contacted him through the directed audio device once. Even then, they were not entirely on good terms. When she managed to reach him, she thanked him for his legendary crested birds with poisonous feathers. She spoke more than 10 sentences while Shen Yinma kept silent. After listening to her, he merely chuckled but did not say anything before hanging up. Later on, when Gu Shijio started contacting him again, he stopped answering. It was the same this time. The directed audio talisman glowed in her palm for more than 10 times, but no one picked up. Could that bastard have thrown her directed audio talisman away? Gu Shijio had a strong feeling that she could be right. She thought about it and decided to go to Yuhang Zhenren training ground, Wujia Hill. That was also what she had promised Yuhang Zhenren. She still had the appearance of a 12 to 13-year-old kid and introduced herself as Rin Chongsheng before going up Wujia Hill. Those who were guarding the gates had been ordered to let her in. Hence, they invited her gleefully up the hill, while addressing her as their senior. Gu Shijio asked the guard, "Has your big brother returned? He came back once yesterday, but he left again this morning." Gu Shijio was surprised. If Shen Yinma was not at the hill, then what was she going there for? Where'd he go? The apprentice looked at Gu Shijio warily. "Do you like big brothers well?" Gu Shijio replied nonchalantly, "Yeah, I like him. He is cute." The male apprentice said was dumbfounded. That was his first time hearing someone describing his big brother with the adjective cute. He found it rather rare. Nonetheless, he was excited. "Sister, a lot of people like big brother. Those who had sisters always got envious of him and would silently see him as their rival." Shen Yanmo's figure appeared in Gu Zijia's mind. The little fella really had a dangerous face. Therefore, it was probably very easy for him to attract girls. Gu Shijio listened to the gossip about Shen Yinma for a while, and finally interrupted the boy apprentice who had been rambling. "You get to tell me where his big brother gone to." The boy apprentices were rather embarrassed. "We are not sure either. Big brother tends to do his things secretively, and he has not returned to the hill much throughout these 2 years. However, our master would definitely be aware of it. You could go up the hill and ask him." Gu Shijio kept her disappointment to herself. All right, then she would go and visit Yuhang Zhenren since she was his apprentice. It was courtesy for her to visit him. The apprentice guided her into the hill, and she then saw numerous tall buildings built by the hillside. Shrouded among the phoenix tree forest, with green stones being paved into pathways underneath them, coupled with the drizzle and the moist green, it looked somewhat secluded. Gu Shijio ascended the stairs and reached the top. She met a young man. When he saw her, all of a sudden, his eyes lit up, and he rushed toward her. "Sister Chongsheng." The young man was, in fact, Siqing. Seeing that he was up and about, it was obvious that the venom had been cured. Siqing was exhilarated to see her. He then took her to the living area. Gu Shijio met Yuhang Zhenren at the hall of Wujia Hill and greeted him politely. Yuhang Zhenren was all fresh. "Chongsheng, you are finally back. That plan of yours was of great leverage, and the medicine you prepared was rather effective as well." Siqing and Qing Luo both took them and fully recovered after resting for half a day. Gu Zijia's lips curved upwards. She knew that the medicine would be effective. "Zhenren, where is Nianma?" After Gu Shijio and Yuhang Zhenren casually chatted for a while, Gu Shijio went for her ultimate goal. Yuhang Zhenren was puzzled as he looked at her pretty face. You came because of him?" Of course. Had it not been for that little fella, why would she call Yuhang Zhenren her master? In fact, her external abilities were comparable to that of Yuhang Zhenren's. Gu Shijio did not answer. She waited patiently for Yu Hang Zhenren's answer. She did not expect Yu Hang Zhenren to answer her in a solemn tone. Chongsheng, you have achieved so much at such a young age. It is obvious that you are a genius. You are still young and should leave matters pertaining to relationship aside. Focus on your training instead. One day, you will be a successful person. Gu Shijio was annoyed. It seemed that Yu Hang Zhenren had treated her as an admirer of Shen Nianma. Yu Hang Zhenren continued, although Nianma looks like an adult, he is essentially still a 6-year-old child. He is not worth you adoring him. Chongsheng, you are mature, and I hope that you will prioritize the bigger picture. Gu Shijio rubbed the inner corners of her eyebrows and cut Yu Hang Zhenren's nagging off. Zhenren, you have misunderstood. I do not have any special feelings for him. He is still a child. How will I hold such an intention towards him? She would not do such a thing. Gu Shiju looked at Yu Hang Zhenren sincerely and continued, I only appreciate him for his talent and would like to help him with his training so that his external abilities can improve. Yu Hang Zhenren was dubious. You want to help him with his training? How are you going to help? Why would you have such an intention? From how you guys spoke to each other that day, it seemed like that was your first time seeing each other, and I have never heard Nianma mention you beforehand as well. Gu Shijio had such proficient external abilities with such great capabilities. Had Shen Nianma known her beforehand, he would have mentioned her. Yu Hang Zhenren's had incessant questions, while Gu Shijio only answered in 7 words. I only appreciate him for his talents. Yu Hang Zhenren was speechless. What do you mean by appreciating him for his talents? I think it is just love at first sight, and you have cracked such an excuse. Huh? Qing Luo, who had been standing there, could not help but say it aloud. Gu Shijio landed her gaze on Qing Luo. The young lady was agitated. Her face was flushed. Obviously, she saw Gu Shijio as a rival. When a young lady got jealous, she would become irrational. Hence, Gu Shijio smiled, and on her pretty face emerged 2 dimples. You are right. It was love at first sight. He is the love of my heart, the light from the moon, and my red-colored rose. She cringed at herself as she spoke. The other apprentices in the hall were also shaken. Qing Luo was dumbfounded. The young lady was so mad that her face had turned pale. There is no use if you like him, because he will never like you back. He knows that you would latch on to him. That is why he left. And he had left with Sister Jinghua. Sister Jinghua's medical skills are 1,000 times better than yours. Her master's medicinal skills are 10,000 times better than yours. Big Brother does not need you to help him with his training. He has masters to teach him. Gu Shijio turned to look at Yu Hang Zhenren. Should Nianma not be learning under you for 10 years? Has some other master apprenticed him already? Yu Hang Zhenren heaved a sigh. Nianma is extremely smart. Within a matter of 5 years, he had learned everything that I could teach him. He is only coming back this time to bid us goodbye. Yesterday, Feng Xing's apprentice, Guan Jinghua, came to fetch him, and after having his farewell meal, he left with Guan Jinghua. Gu Shijio was in disbelief. The little fella had tricked her, which means she allowed herself to be apprenticed to a master for no reason. After giving off a sigh, she turned and left. Spiritual Master Yu Hang was stunned. He never expected her to leave so decisively. He quickly said, Chongsheng, you promised that you would join my apprenticeship. Gu Shijio paused. She turned back and smiled. Master, I have already praised you. However, I did not promise to stay in Mountain Wujia. Well, please take care of yourself. I have to go now. She arched her hand and walked away. Spiritual Master Yu Hang was stunned. In the past 2 years, there have been many girls chasing after his baby apprentice. However, no one chased after him so openly like Gu Shijio. Her intention was clear. It was all about Shen Nianma. If Shen Nianma were here, she would stay. Otherwise, she would leave. She did not even want to pretend for the sake of keeping the peace. Who was Shen Nianma to her? What was Mountain Wujia to her? Spiritual Master Yu Hang had lived in this world for so long. It was the first time he was ignored in such a manner. He was not happy. and his face turned serious. Chongsheng, as my disciple, you cannot come and leave freely as you like. He flicked his finger, and the door of the hall slammed shut. Spiritual Master Yu Hang was a first-class master in this continent. His accomplishment spells is of the highest order. Even Divine Lord Shun Juli often praised him. Otherwise, Shun Juli would not let his precious son worship him and be his apprentice. He had been practicing for 2,000 years, and his spiritual power was already at the 6th level of a mighty immortal. It was already a top-notch existence in this Saha world. Such a person always had a strong aura. When they were in a jovial state, it was not visible. However, when they were serious, the atmosphere around them would feel frozen. Some weaker disciples could even struggle to breathe. Everyone could not help but take a few steps back and hold their breath. The disciples with weaker skills were already pale due to the immense pressure, and their hearts were pumping very rapidly. Gu Shijio slowly turned back. She raised her eyebrows and looked at Spiritual Master Yu Hang. Are you going to make me stay forcibly? Her expression was very calm, and her clothes were fluttering. The intense aura of Spiritual Master Yu Hang seemed to have no impact on her. Chongsheng, you are now my apprentice and not a guest, Spiritual Master Yu Hang said sternly. Since you are my disciple, I have the right to control you and prevent you from leaving the mountain. You have to stay on the mountain. Emotions were controlling this outstanding little girl. As her master, he had an obligation to bring her back to the right path. She should not make any more mistakes. Gu Shijio looked down and sighed softly. Her voice was cold. By right, it should be the case. It seems like if I always recognize you as my master, I can't freely go down the mountain. That being the case, I am sorry, Spiritual Master Yu Hang. I can only expel myself from your apprenticeship. I can't worship you as my teacher anymore. Spiritual Master Yu Hang was speechless. The other disciples were shocked too. It was the first time in such a long life. Most of the time, they only heard that the master had to expel a disciple from their apprenticeship, never the other way around. The face of Spiritual Master Yu Hang was dark. Chongsheng, are you trying to be a traitor? Do you know that being a traitor in this continent is a big sin? Once a disciple betrays their apprenticeship, the lightest punishment is to abolish all the learnings from the apprenticeship and get expelled, while the heaviest punishment is to be chased and killed by the whole world. Anyone can kill and punish you. Gu Shijio looked calm and cold. Spiritual Master Yu Hang, I have never learned any skill from your apprenticeship. How are you going to abolish my learning? Spiritual Master Yu Hang remained silent. He could not answer a question. Gu Shijio flicked her finger. Gu Shijio continued speaking casually. As for having the whole world chase me, do you think I will be afraid of it? Spiritual Master Yu Hang sensitively grasped the meaning behind her words. Who are you? It did not sound like a sentence that should be asked of a little girl. Gu Shijio smirked. She made a turn, and a colorful light flashed. She restored her original appearance. The clothes she wore this time could be changed according to her size. Thus, this time, there was no pressure to restore the original body. As her body was changing, she quickly put on new robes from her storage space. She completed those tasks at lightning speed. After the colorful light flashed, a person wearing a dark purple gown could be seen with a mask. Even though Gu Shijio did not talk, her aura was quite compelling. Spiritual Master Yu Hang suddenly widened his eyes and took a few steps back. You are the woman who appeared at Nianmo's 1-year-old party and gave him a bracelet? Spiritual Master Yu Hang had a profound impression about it. Therefore, when she appeared with the same outlook at the moment, Spiritual Master Yu Hang could immediately recognize her. Gu Shijio smirked. Spiritual Master Yu Hang, can you still remember me? Spiritual Master Yu Hang was in utter shock. When Gu Shijio delivered the gift, she turned and disappeared right away. She could enter and leave the Fanteon Palace of the Divine Lord freely. Thus, it had triggered a massive discussion among the guests to guess her identity. Gu Shijio had always visited this continent, but there was no trace of her. She was very mysterious. Usually, she lived like a normal person. However, when she attacked, it would be very striking, and most of the time, her opponents would be severely injured to the extent that even their parents could not recognize them. When people in this continent talked about her, they generally equated her with the Divine Lord and the Great Devil. They thought that she was a legend who ranked just below the Divine Lord and the Great Devil. In the eyes of the people on this continent, the status of this mysterious person was still extremely high. It was even higher than Spiritual Master Yu Hang. In fact, Spiritual Master Yu Hang had always wanted to meet her, but he was never able to find a chance. He could not locate her at all. However, he did not expect her to appear in this situation. He did not even think that the beautiful little girl was the mysterious, grimmest person. The other disciples who were present were also stunned and looked at her. No one could speak for a moment. Even the arrogant Qing Luo also stunned and dare not speak again. Spiritual Master Yu Hang, do you think I still need to worship you as my teacher? Spiritual Master Yu Hang was very angry. He said, "Of course, you don't need to worship me as your teacher. However, were you trying to fool me by transforming into a kid? No wonder that this little girl had such a high skill." Spiritual Master Yu Hang had been excited to have such a talented apprentice for 3 days. He had not been sleeping well due to the excitement. He had been looking forward to her arrival even more than the stars and moon. However, he never expected all this to unravel. Gu Shijio said leisurely, "Spiritual Master Yu Hang, you are wrong. I transformed into a little girl because I needed to enter into the tree palace to fool the guards and rescue your disciples. I did not do that to fool you." Spiritual Master Yu Hang finally understood the whole situation from his disciple. After Gu Shijio mentioned it, he knew that Gu Shijio was telling the truth. However, it was fine to transform into a little girl to rescue people. However, why would you say you want to worship me as your teacher using the identity of a little girl? Spiritual Master Yu Hang was not convinced. Gu Shijio gently sighed. At that moment, I did not want to reveal my identity, so it was not convenient to restore my original appearance. As for worshiping you as my teacher, it is actually a misunderstanding. I really want to take Niema as my disciple. However, he refused to worship me. I have my own reason to stay by his side. Therefore, I was aggrieved to join your apprenticeship to be his senior sister apprentice. Was she aggrieved to join? Spiritual Master Yu Hang's lips were shivering. He almost got choked by her words and could not breathe. Did she know that there were so many young talents in this continent that were trying to worship him as a teacher? At that time, the previous famous crown Prince Yun Yanli also wanted to worship him as a teacher. However, due to his lower skill, he was not qualified to join his apprenticeship. Now, Gu Shijio said that she was aggrieved to join. Nonetheless, with her capability, it was genuinely aggrieved for her to worship him as a teacher. It took him a long time to ask, "What is your reason to stay beside Niema?" He is only a 6-year-old kid. Spiritual Master Yu Hang's voice was full of doubt. It sounded like Gu Shijio was an old cow who likes to eat the fresh grass. It made Gu Shijio somewhat unhappy. She stepped forward, and Spiritual Master Yu Hang immediately stepped back in alert. Nonetheless, he still wanted to protect his disciple. He tried to persuade Gu Shijio. "I think you are even older than me. Although Niema looks like an adult, he is just a kid. Even if you can transform into a younger look, you are an experienced master. You are not suitable for Niema. There are so many talented men of your age in this world. You should let the kid go." Gu Shijio was speechless. The anger in her heart had triggered the mischievous cells in her. She chuckled at that last remark. "Spiritual Master Yu Hang, you can rest assured." Spiritual Master Yu Hang heaved a sigh of relief, but the next sentence said by Gu Shijio almost made him vomit blood. "I do not like men of my age. I like to eat fresh grass. I will definitely want Niema and stay by his side. I will not mistreat him and will treat him like a precious baby." After she finished the shocking sentence, Gu Shijio naturally turned around and left freely. It left Spiritual Master Yu Hang and the remaining disciples stunned. Gu Shijio felt rather regretful for having said those things. She said those offensive words just to make spiritual master Yu Hang feel frustrated. However, she did not expect this to be spread to the public. When Gu Shijie woke up at the inn and had lunch in the cafe, she suddenly realized that she had become the topic of discussion for everyone. She was furious with it. Hey, have you heard? The mysterious grimace person has eyed on the son of the Divine Lord and the great devil, Shun Yinma. She personally came to Mount Wujia to look for him. She even transformed into a little girl and wanted to stay with him. Well, I also heard that the mysterious grimace person should be thousands of years old. She actually likes a kid. Her taste is so strange. I know, right? I heard that the mysterious grimace person has a scary face. No one could differentiate her gender. No one actually dared to approach her. And now she has eyes on little Nianma. She not only used a bracelet to constrain him, now she even announced that she wants to marry little Nianma at Mount Wujia. She would kill anyone who blocks her. That poor kid. His parents are not around at this moment. It will be a miserable moment for him. Sigh. I agree with you. It is really a disaster. Countless rumors poured into Gu's Zigious ears, which made her repent her action. Was it possible for her to turn back time and take back the words she had uttered? It was making her miserable. She sat alone in the room. While listening to the rumors outside, she took a look at the mirror. The woman in the mirror looked like a flower. Her skin was as delicate as a baby's, bright as the flowers that bloomed in the spring. She looked young and youthful. Why did they refer to her as an ugly old lady? Humph. They actually said that she looked scary. Frankly speaking, there were not many ladies that looked as good as her on this continent. No one dared to pursue her. That was because of her high vision and the fact that she did not like anyone. If she were really interested, she could just show a little interest, and there would many men waiting to marry her. Gu Shijie silently complained in her heart. It was the little man, Shun Nianmo's fault. Although he was so young, he was also very cunning. Because of him, she was now infamous on this side of the planet. Sadly, she thought that she treated Shin Yinma quite well. They had cooperated to take down the enemy and even find a cure for his juniors. It was a pleasant experience. Why would he suddenly become so arrogant? In fact, Gu Shijie had spent a night wondering how to find Shin Yinma. She knew the temperament of Master Fengxing. The medical skills of this man were unique, but his personality was equally strange. He was a famous guardian who treated his disciples better than his own son. He would not accept disciples easily either. Once he accepts a disciple, he would treat them wholeheartedly. His own disciples were always the best. They were all geniuses who came from noble families. If his disciples were bullied, he would seek revenge for them that would be far worse than what they received. He was always biased toward his own disciples and would do anything for them. Once he accepted someone as a disciple, it was impossible for others to grab from him or her. It was even more difficult than digging out his heart. Moreover, he had a rule. The disciples under his apprenticeship must not have a romantic relationship before they finish their learning. If an affair were discovered, he would not hesitate to separate them. Coincidentally, Gu Shijie had just offended his two taboos. In fact, Gu Shijie only offended one. She really wanted to grab his disciple from him, but she had never wanted to form a romantic relationship with Shin Yinma. However, after this rumor had circulated, Master Fengxing would definitely put her at the top on his blacklist. What role could she use to find Shin Yinma again? She could not use her original appearance and could not transform into a little girl. It was because it had been stated in the rumor that she used to turn into a little girl to approach Shun Yinma and tried to be his senior sister apprentice. Therefore, Master Fengxing would definitely be prepared and would never accept new disciples that seemed like her. Would it be a good idea to break into the mountain to steal him away? Master Fengxing was famous for medical skill, but his other aspects were still not very strong. Although there would probably be robust mechanisms in his mountain, Gu Shijie was also an expert in solving mechanisms. She was confident in her abilities. However, she was afraid that even with all that effort, the arrogant boy would not want to go with her. Gu Shijie took out the directed audio spell from her storage space. Should she try to contact him again to explain her sincerity? to help him practice? Gu Shijio made up her mind to take a try. This time, once she switched on the spell, it was picked up right away by the person at the other side. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.